day at Chelsea. They are in talks with Graham Potter over becoming their new head coach just hours after sacking Thomas Tuchel. And the decision to sack Tuchel came after Chelsea's shock defeat at Dinamo Zagreb in the Champions League. It also comes exactly 100 days after the Todd Boehly-led consortium took over the club. Well, our senior reporter Rob Dorsett is at Stamford Bridge for us this evening. Hi again, Rob. I mean, this has escalated, as they say, rather quickly. Just take us through what has happened so far today, and ultimately now how close we are to Graham Potter becoming the new Chelsea head coach.
I think we're getting closer by the hour, David, you have to say. And whilst we don't expect any contracts to be signed, any confirmation that Potter is the new Chelsea manager today, it could well be that that is the case tomorrow. It could be that Chelsea announce Graham Potter as their new manager as early as tomorrow, which would be quite extraordinary. And even by this football club's recent standards, it's been a tumultuous day, hasn't it? Let's talk you through the timeline. 10 o'clock this morning, we get an email from Chelsea saying they have sacked manager Thomas Tuchel. That was a bit of a bolt from the blue. Very few people had predicted it or expected it. And whilst we were still dealing with the fallout from that, I received confirmation at 10:30, just half an hour later, that Graham Potter was Chelsea's primary target to replace Thomas Tuchel. We understood at that point that Chelsea were preparing to approach Brighton to ask for official permission to speak to Graham Potter, and indeed that happened about an hour later. And because Chelsea made it clear that they were prepared to pay the clause in Graham Potter's contract to allow him to leave, Brighton were pretty much forced to allow Chelsea to speak to their manager, and we expect that to happen. As I understand it, Graham Potter is now in central London, where he's due to meet Todd Boehly imminently, and some of the other senior executives of Chelsea as well, where they will go through the details of his contract. I expect it to be a lengthy contract that they are discussing, because Chelsea want this to be a long-term appointment, an appointment of a head coach that can change their ethos right across the spectrum of their footballing operation. And we expect that Graham Potter will get that gig, although it isn't done yet and nothing has been signed. But yeah, you put that into context, in the space of 8 hours, as we are now, Thomas Tuchel has been surprisingly sacked, and we are well down the road to Chelsea appointing his successor. That's because they've been planning this, as I understand, for several weeks. This isn't a knee-jerk reaction to that defeat in the Champions League last night, or a poorish start by Chelsea standards in the Premier League either. No, this is a strategic decision that Todd Boehly has decided to make, and he is now putting into operation.
But in order for Graham Potter to take potentially this opportunity, they needed to get rid of Thomas Tuchel. So why did that happen in the first place? Why Potter and not Thomas Tuchel?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think a lot of Chelsea supporters feel it's premature to have got rid of Thomas Tuchel. He was very popular with them. Bear in mind, it was only a year ago, just over a year ago, that Thomas Tuchel won the Champions League for Chelsea, the pinnacle of the game in Europe. And he was being lauded then as a brilliant communicator, a brilliant tactician, a motivator of players. But my understanding is, and several people have explained this to me, that Todd Boehly in particular, but other senior members of Chelsea's hierarchy, had lost confidence, had lost faith in Thomas Tuchel. He had started, they believe, to communicate with them more infrequently, less clearly. He didn't seem able to motivate the players. I'm told a number of Chelsea's senior players had concerns about the tactical approach that Tuchel was taking to certain matches, that he wasn't communicating his philosophy very effectively to them. If you like, he'd lost his mojo, as far as a lot of people inside of Chelsea had decided. And so, whilst Todd Boehly had inherited Thomas Tuchel as his head coach, he's now decided to make a change. And there'll be a lot of people, you'll hear from Jamie Carragher shortly, who says he has concerns that this is back to the old days where Chelsea hire and fire. I understand that Todd Boehly is absolutely determined that that will not be the case. He does not want to be a hiring and firing boss of Chelsea Football Club. And to add to that, Graham Potter, I believe, wouldn't have been interested in talking to Chelsea had that been the case, because he's a very ambitious man, a very clever man. He's done a fantastic job at Brighton under limited resources, and so he will carefully choose his next opportunity. He's always wanted to go with a top four club. Looks like he's going to get that opportunity as well. And I'll just leave you with one little comparison, if you like. When Todd Boehly and his business compatriots took over the LA Dodgers baseball team back in 2012, they had an incumbent manager in place in charge of that baseball team. But they stuck with it for a year or two, and then in 2015, they put their own man in charge, Dave Roberts. He's still in charge now, 7 years later. That is the blueprint that Todd Boehly is working to. That's what he wants Graham Potter to do at Chelsea, and look entirely at the football operation, from the academy right through to the current coaching setup and sports science, through to the senior squad as well. So it's a big task. It's a big step up for Graham Potter if he gets given this job finally, as we think he will maybe tomorrow. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. As I understand it, Graham Potter meeting Ted Boehly as we speak to you now for the first time this evening, where they will talk through the philosophy, the details of that contract. They'll have dinner together, and then the nitty-gritty of the contract will be ironed out at some stage tomorrow.
Okay, Rob, live at Stamford Bridge, thank you very much indeed.